Welcome to the Simply Real Life podcast. I'm Sarah, the founder of Simply Real Health, here to help you simplify, amplify, and elevate your life. This show is for those of you who want the real talk on how to live a more intuitive and intentional life, a life that's healthy from the inside out, and one that feels more effortless, aligned, simple, and more alive. We cover it all, from health, wellness, mindset, motherhood, daily habits and rituals, to business and relationships, creativity and growth, and tiny tricks to feeling your best, and the energetics behind it all filled with personal stories, unfiltered conversations, and of course, answering all of your burning questions, all in the way of simplicity and keeping it real, so that you can create your own version of your healthiest life. Let's do it. Hi, you guys. Welcome back to the Simply Real Life podcast. I am so thrilled today because I have Bethany, the founder of Primally Pure. She is truly a visionary when it comes to non-toxic skincare. And she is the founder of this amazing skincare company that you all probably know about from me because I can't stop talking about it ever. And she's the mother of three. I have been wanting to talk to Bethany for so long about these things because not only has she created this beautiful brand and is doing these massive things in the world, but she's also a mother and has been doing all of those things all at the same time. So Bethany, welcome to the show.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for having me. So excited to talk to you.
I am sure that so many people in my audience have heard me talk about Primally Pure, and it's because I am just obsessed with everything that you have created and everything that you've done and the way that you have done it. But I want to know how this started, because when I first met you, what was that, like 6 years ago? When I first got to meet you in person, it was like, oh my gosh, this girl is on my same page. She is thinking about a lot of the things that I am thinking about. And I have always felt like very different than most people in that I have cared a lot about health and wellness and the wisdom of the body and keeping things simple and taking all of the things that seem complicated about health and wellness now and going back to how things maybe used to be. So can you walk us through how this started for you? Like, was health and wellness something that you have always been into? How did you fall into skincare? Like, what was the turning point or moment for you that you remember thinking like, oh, this is like a big light bulb moment?
Yeah, I feel like now you and I are on such a similar trajectory in terms of stripping things down to basics and thinking about how people lived and ate and took care of themselves centuries ago and going back to that. But I would say for the majority of my life, I was going from one trend to the next. I was always interested in health and wellness, but really went about it in a lot of ways that looking back were probably not super healthy at all, but in the moment I thought they were. And it wasn't until my now husband and his dad and brother started a regenerative farm, livestock farm, that my eyes were opened to this new way of eating, like eating real food, not these gimmicky fad diet, quote, health foods, things like that, but just eating real foods. And so it started with that. It started with food for me. Once I started eating real foods, I noticed a huge improvement in the health of my skin and in just how I felt overall. So at that point, I kind of assessed the rest of my life and thought like, okay, I've had it wrong with food. I've tried all these different things. Nothing has felt right until I started doing something very simple, just eating whole, real, unprocessed foods. What else have I been doing wrong my whole life? And I started looking at personal care products because I was the girl in high school who would try any infomercial product, any drugstore product to try and get the best skin I could have. And I dealt with acne and sensitivity issues to a lot of these products I was trying and things like that. So to me, that just felt like the natural next step. I looked at other things like deodorant. That was a big thing that was mind blowing for me. Like, wow, I had no idea that this product that I just assumed was safe because it was being sold in a store really actually wasn't safe at all and probably contributing to a lot of hormonal issues and toxicity issues that I was dealing with. So I was just immersed in studying these products and trying to find alternatives. And this was back in 2012 when I started looking into all of this. So there weren't as many options on the market as there are today. And I thought it'd be fun to order some ingredients and start trying to make my own natural replacements for the products I had been using for my entire life. And once I started doing that, I was really excited about how my skin responded. I was telling friends and family about it, so they were trying my products. And before long, they were wanting to place orders, and I wasn't operating as a business at that point, but it got my wheels turning of could this be a business? And slowly over the course of several years, I was actually working at Special Olympics, an organization in Arizona at the time. My husband was a teacher in Arizona, and the farm was here in California where we are now. So we quit our jobs in Arizona, moved back to Southern California to get this farm going with his family. A bunch of us were living in the same house for a year and a half. It was crazy. And I was making skincare products in the kitchen when people were trying to cook. It was a wild time of starting these businesses. We would process chickens as a family in the backyard together. Looking back, I'm like, man, I can't believe that was my life for a period of time. It was nuts, but it kind of just started out of this natural passion for health and wellness and exploring different facets of health and wellness in my own life and finding these solutions that worked for me and then just wanting to share that with others.
It's amazing. I mean, I feel just so similar to you. There's so many parts of your story that I'm like, same girl, same. This is the same thing. I just couldn't stop testing everything. I wanted to try all the diets. I wanted to try all the different ways of eating. Like every drugstore brand I've probably tried. I loved beauty, skincare, hair care. I think back on all of that stuff now. I'm like, oh my gosh. I just didn't know. And it was obviously not something talked about. I would say even now it's just starting to be talked about a bit more in mainstream. But like back then, it just, you're right. There was not a lot of options. And of the options that were there, it was definitely not to the appeal of a teenage girl. You couldn't find that stuff in the drugstore or anywhere else.
The information was not as readily available as it is now. This was like not necessarily pre-internet. I think I was using it for AIM, like chatting at the time. I wasn't researching things. I don't know if anyone was really doing that at the time. But we were being advertised to via commercials on TV. And I think back when we were growing up in the 90s and early 2000s, we just bought into whatever we were being sold on TV. And at least I was.
Yeah, I was too. Absolutely. So was your husband raised on a farm? He knew about real food. So in meeting him, was that sort of the eye-opening, or was it just observation of being on a farm or seeing the process and what goes on?
Yeah, his family was kind of the catalyst, but it was all new to them as well. My husband's one of 5 siblings, and their dad was always obsessed with regenerative agriculture, like before it was cool. I mean, in his office today, he has a library of books on regenerative agriculture, and that was just always his hobby. And he knew about this before, like now it's trending and it's this cool concept, but I mean, he was into this. He's been into this for the last several decades. And he would always talk about it. And finally, Jeff, my husband, and his brother and brother-in-law were like, let's just do this for our family. Let's order some chicks and raise them in this way because we can't find healthy chicken anywhere. And terms like cage-free and free range like actually mean almost nothing. So once they discovered all of that, they were like, let's just try this. Tom, our dad, knows all of the stuff that we need to do. Let's just do it for us. They started documenting the journey on Facebook at the time. And people were like, we want to order some. How do we get a Primal Pastures chicken? So we sold out of the first 50 chicks before they were even full grown. And I think very quickly they just noticed this demand for healthy animal products. And all of us, I would say, were living pretty Western conventional lives, eating standard American diets pretty much, and had standard jobs. Like my brother-in-law quit his job to run the farm, was a CPA. And like I said, my husband was a teacher. And so we all had these normal jobs, and slowly but surely, one by one, would quit our job to start helping with the farm. So all of us were exploring it together at the time.
It's amazing. I love that. Like one of the ingredients that you use comes from the farm. Was that kind of the starting point? How did you discover connecting the farm, the chickens, the tallow that is used in a lot of the products? Like how did you start to connect those dots together?
Yeah. So part of what we explored with Primal Pastures, the farm, was just looking at how our ancestors ate and how our ancestors utilized the animals that they killed and processed and fed to their families and tribes and whatnot. And part of that was eating the organs. That was a new concept to me, but it's something that once I learned more about, it just made so much sense. And I was a vegetarian at one point in life, like I did that whole thing.
You, yep.
You too,
I
yeah.
did everything.
So I get the argument of preserving life, but this just really clicked for me. Back in the day when an animal was killed, people wanted to honor the life of the animal by using every part of it. And that means, of course, eating the meat, but then also consuming the organs, which are really nutrient dense, and then using the fat, rendering the fat to use on the skin. And so all of this just clicked for me. And once I learned about some of the properties of tallow, it's really rich in fat soluble vitamins, A, D, E, and K. And these are nutrients that aren't found anywhere near the same amounts in plant-based ingredients. And so I just got really excited about this, and I started rendering our own tallow and using it in the products. And it's such a nourishing ingredient. I mean, it's in our body butter, it's in our deodorant. I think it's one of the reasons that our deodorant is so nourishing compared to other natural deodorants on the market. We have a lot of people that come to us that have tried our competitors' products. A lot of natural deodorants contain baking soda. Ours does as well, but baking soda can be irritating. It fights odor really well, but it can be irritating. And we get a lot of people that say, I used X brand and it gave me a rash, and then I switched to yours and I haven't had any issues. And I really think one of the main reasons for that is because we use tallow and because it's so nourishing for the skin and really helps with sensitivities, eczema, things like that. So anyways, that was a long answer, but I just got really excited about tallow and the properties of tallow and using that in different products.
I think it's amazing. It does become a sort of a natural progression when you do start to pay a little bit more attention to food and you're thinking about, okay, I want to eat more real food. And then you really do notice this difference everywhere in your body, your skin and your digestion, and probably most of all, your energy and your sleep and your mood. It's just like connected to all these things. And so I think for most people, it usually starts there. And then eventually, like you're saying, you start to think, what am I putting on my skin? Light bulbs start going off all over the place of like, what are the ingredients there? Is it something that my body could recognize? Could it understand? Could it decode? And I think it's so beautiful how you've taken that approach. It's almost like real food skincare. Same as you're feeding the inside is how you're also wanting to feed and nourish the outside.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a revolutionary concept. I just really don't see that done. And I think it's one of the things that makes Primally Pure such a beautiful and intentional and well thought out company. At the core, it feels like that mission is there, back to simplicity and back to real foods that are nourishing both inside and out.
Yeah, absolutely. And that progression that you're talking about, I think it can feel overwhelming to people sometimes of like, oh my gosh, everything's toxic. Why am I even bothering? But I like to think about it in stages, and any change you're able to make is going to have a positive impact on your health. So even if you don't do this massive overhaul, anything you do is going to make a difference. I'm still finding things now that I'm realizing like, oh, I should probably switch to a different brand for my living room rugs, just different things like cookware. I had a stainless steel French press coffee maker, and I actually posted something about it, and someone messaged me and was like, hey, did you know that that coffee maker, the stainless steel, is actually coated in non-material? And I'm just like, no, I had no idea.
Yeah.
I guess I'm finding something else now.
Totally. And it's true.
Yeah. And we always encourage people to use products that you have in your kitchen for a lot of things like skincare related. So you can make your own deodorant out of baking soda and coconut oil. You can use arrowroot powder mixed with cocoa powder as a dry shampoo. Like there's so many things that you can do. There's so many swaps you can make just out of ingredients that you probably have in your kitchen if you're not ready to invest in natural skincare products from us or another brand yet.
So you're making stuff in your kitchen. What products did you start with for yourself? Like what were the first things that you were dipping your toe in and then giving to friends and getting that feedback on?
Some of the early things I started making, deodorant was a big
Right.
one. That took me a lot of tries to get it right. I was determined to get it right because my husband didn't want to use anything that didn't work. So that
Mhm.
was kind of my motivation. I was doing CrossFit at the time and sharing it with people that I was working out with and getting their feedback and taking that and using that to make my next formula. I tried so many different formulas. So that was a big one that I worked on for a long time. Lip balm was another early one. Cleansing oil, which I'm obsessed with. We have a cleansing oil that I love, and that made a huge difference in the health of my skin. Like my whole life, I had used really harsh cleansers that stripped my skin of its natural moisture barrier. And I thought that was a good thing at the time because I had oily, acne prone skin. So I was like, let's like remove
Yes,
all oil.
perfect.
But
Yeah.
then, yeah, I didn't know that that caused my skin to overproduce oil and kind of exacerbated the problem. So when I switched to oil cleansing, that made a huge difference for me. So I love that product. That was one of the early ones. Body butter was another early one. I formulated a toner really early on, which is now called Everything Spray. And then I started getting into serums. I started getting really excited about essential oils and ingredients like astaxanthin. That's a really powerful antioxidant found in nature, and having a lot of fun with creating different serums for different skin types too.
I mean, you're just naming all my favorite things, really. Like, this sounds like my normal morning routine. Yep, like all of those things, and it's, I think, amazing to see the mission behind your brand in doing that. So many brands market themselves as clean or natural, but then when you look at the ingredients, which is how I judge everything, it's how I teach people to even look at food. Like, just look at your ingredient label, and that will tell you everything you need to know in terms of how your body can process that and digest it or not, whether it's confusing or it's going to weigh it down or it doesn't know what to do with that. I am sure there's been so many times and moments along the way where it maybe would have been easier to use synthetic ingredients or find things that were less expensive to produce. How has that process gone for you in terms of experimenting, finding, sourcing these different materials, food grade materials almost for everything? Has that been something that has been very important to you this whole time? Because I think it's so rare. It's like honestly so hard to find, and I really haven't seen it done anywhere else.
Yeah, it's been a challenge for sure. It's been challenging in a few different ways. One, natural ingredients aren't always uniform, so things can vary depending on the season, depending on the batch, depending on the supplier. And so we've dealt with random things. Like one time, kind of early-ish on in the business, my team, I had a few people working for me at the time. They made a batch of deodorant. It smelled terrible. And so at that point, we went back to every raw ingredient, examining them, smelling them, figuring out what is going on here. And I think we had just increased our batch size. So at the time, I think that was probably a batch of 200 deodorants, which now, I mean, our batches are much larger than that. But at the time, that was a huge cost, to
Yeah.
manufacture 200 deodorants and have it not turn out well. But as we were examining the ingredients, we noticed that the arrowroot powder smelled like cumin. And cumin, people say, smells like BO. So it's not
Right.
something that you want your deodorant to smell like. And so we talked to the manufacturer, realized that they had stored the cumin and the arrowroot close together. And I think they maybe didn't clean out the grinder or something. And it was very, very cuminy. Um, and so things happen sometimes, but that's why I really love that we do everything in house. We manufacture our products in house, and our team now is really well trained on examining ingredients as we receive them. And sometimes things do vary a little bit naturally, and that's fine. But if something varies too much, then we know that before we use the ingredient in our products. And it does make it more difficult. Like we have to pay a little bit more close attention to things, but I'm grateful that we can do everything in house and can keep a tight hold on it. That's been a temptation too, to outsource manufacturing, which most skincare companies do. A lot of skincare companies manufacture in a different state and a lot of times even another country. And we haven't done that. We have been able to keep it all in one place and really ensure the freshest ingredients possible and that we're shipping out the freshest products possible too, and products that haven't been on a truck for days, weeks, months, or stored in a hot warehouse for a long time. I really feel good about the freshness of products that we're able to put out there, but it's been challenging. And then working with formulators, like in the beginning, I was doing all the formulation, but over the years, we've worked with different formulators on specific products. And for certain things, I've worked with formulators that tell me this isn't possible. We can't do this unless we use this preservative or whatnot. And so it's just been a matter of finding the right people that are willing to think outside the box for solutions. And yeah, it's presented a lot of challenges, but it's been cool to be able to work through some of those too.
Well, I'm so thankful that you have, because it's always something where I feel so confident recommending any of your products to anybody. I know that there's nothing dangerous in them. There's no risks involved. It's always fresh. You just have that very high quality standard in ingredients and in knowing the combinations of these different things together and really what they can produce. I think most people are so surprised when they do make the switch and they're like, wait, this actually works. And not only does it work, but my skin is so much healthier and it's looking so much better. And it's mind blowing, I think, to people that something made with such simple, pure ingredients really has that massive effect on how it looks and, of course, the health of things. So you're in the kitchen, you are making these by hand, you're starting to give them out to people. People are coming back to you saying, I love this, I want more of this. Where does it go from there?
So from there, I'm a one-woman show for a while. And then I get pregnant with our first daughter, June. And at that point, I was like, okay, we were living in a small farmhouse. We weren't in this farmhouse with everybody, but Primal Pastures had moved to a new piece of land, and my husband and I were in that farmhouse on that piece of land. So at that point, I was getting close to the due date and thinking, do I put the business on hold? I mean, I'm not going to be able to manufacture and ship and whatnot after having a baby. I had, I think, one full-time and one part-time employee at the time. I was like, I don't really want someone coming in and making deodorants in our kitchen. And I just want some privacy for a while. Yeah. So do I just kind of put things on pause and wait until I've had a decent maternity leave? Or do I take this leap of faith and hire someone on full time and move the business out of my house into a separate space? And so that's what we decided to do. It was a risk at the time. It wasn't an easy financial jump to make, but I'm so grateful that we did that, because honestly, I feel like every child I've had to let go of something, like let go and let God in some way. And even this last one, we're an established business at this point. I just had a baby a year ago. So we have about 50, 60 employees. We have an awesome headquarters and all of that. But there were still things that I was holding on to that I was forced to let go of because I had a baby. And I honestly feel like the business has grown a lot and my role has been refined with each child I've had. But that's kind of how we got the business to a place where I felt like it could run without me doing everything. And then once I was like, wow, I don't have to be the one to make every product. I don't have to be the one to ship every package. Other people can do these things, which sounds so silly. But at the beginning, I was telling myself like, no, it's never going to be the same unless I'm doing it, which is such a lie. And once I realized that and started thinking more as a business person and less of like, this is my hobby that I'm going to hold close to me and not let anyone else be involved in, and listening to business podcasts and reading books and doing masterminds. We were in a mastermind together and things like that just really opened my eyes to how to operate this as a business. And that really allowed it to take off and grow.
And I think truly what you're saying too about like every child that is born, they change you in some way. You have to surrender to a lot of that entire process, whether it's in pregnancy or it's after the baby's born, or if you are doing or creating something that has also been quote unquote your baby of some type of big shift that happens. And until you experience that for yourself, because I feel so similar to you in that of, oh wow, there's two loves in my life. You know, now there's three that I'm caretaking, and the first was my business. And then with each child, you just kind of expand and you grow into these things, and somehow you can hold those things. It's not always easy. It doesn't look perfect. And I have oftentimes thought of you like, how does she do this? How is she doing this now with 3 kids, young kids, and being in the position of being a founder of a business that continues to exponentially grow? Have there been any other lessons that you feel like have been big things in that process of being a mom, also being a business owner? Like any things that have helped you or lessons that you've had to learn? I mean, I think that the
Um,
surrender and the let go and let God is probably number one for all of us. But have there been anything, other things like that?
yeah, so many things. I I have always admired just how intentional you have been with motherhood and having a business. I remember talking to you when you were first pregnant,
Yeah.
and just the questions you were asking yourself and the way you were thinking about it was so much better than how I went through.
I was asking you because I was like, I don't know how this works. I don't see a lot of women do this. Like, tell me what's going on. I'm like,
Yeah,
tell me
and I
everything,
think
you know?
I wish I had thought through that more. I do feel like things are at a great place now with being a mom and also being the founder of a business, but it wasn't always that way. I made a lot of mistakes in the beginning and I felt overwhelmed more times than I can remember and pulled in 2 different directions and feeling guilty about not being with my child enough. And then when I was with her, feeling like I was letting my team down and not getting to things that I needed to do with the business. So I remember that so clearly, just feeling like I wasn't giving anything the attention that it deserved. And that was never a good feeling. But for me, I had to go through that and learn from it in order to be more intentional and do better in the future. So now I feel like I have a good support system in terms of family and my team at work, and we have help at home as well. And what I have tried to do and still try to do is just anytime something isn't feeling good, sometimes there are just busy weeks at work and busy weeks at home. And so it's never this perfect balance. But sometimes when I feel like I'm just too much in one area and things are being neglected in another area, really paying attention to that and not just brushing it over like, oh, well, it's just how it is. Like, no, I can actually change that. If something isn't feeling good, there's always a little adjustment that I can make. So I just try to pay attention to how I'm feeling about how I'm spending my time and paying attention to my kids and their needs. And do I feel like I'm pouring into them enough based on their demeanor and our interactions? And yeah, so it's been just trying to have an awareness of all things as much as possible and making adjustments based on that. So it hasn't been perfect, but it has gotten to a place where I feel like things are, for the most part, in a really healthy balance. And I'm able to involve my kids in my work and know what I do. They've experienced it. They've been in the warehouse and they've made products before. They come to my office sometimes just to hang out and color while I'm working, just because I want them here with me sometimes. I want them to see the people that I work with and the place that I work. I don't want them to not understand what I do. And so I think things like that have been really cool to share with them too.
That's going to be so impactful for them. Just even seeing you doing what you're doing and doing something that you're passionate about, and that they know when you're not there or with them, they know and have this vision of what you are doing and the mission behind it, and being able to even teach them. They are the next generation. They're going to grow up knowing so much more than me and you did about taking care of themselves and being healthy, and what all the different options and ways that it can look like. They can follow their dreams, they can do something that they want to do. I just think it's incredibly impactful for them to see.
I totally see that set in with my oldest, who's 7 now. Like she thinks that anything is possible. Like there's no barrier, there's no boundaries. She wants to start a bakery one day. Every time we're out in a new city, she'll see something. She's like, "Oh, that's something that I want in my bakery." And totally has this plan, this vision. No part of her is like, "Oh, that's not possible." They think like the sky's the limit, and I love that.
That is so amazing. Okay, so obviously your days are filled to the brim. I know that because I know you personally, but do you have any things that help keep you sane, like non-negotiables or things that you definitely commit to for yourself so that you can be pouring into your work and you can be pouring into your family and you can be pouring into yourself in some ways to make all those other things happen around you. Do you have anything that you really rely on?
Yes, I do. I try not to hold to anything too tightly because life happens
Because you're
and
a mom. Yeah.
yeah, like you never
Multiple
know what's
kids.
going to
Yeah.
happen. And in the past, I've held to routines too tightly that I just get so frustrated when they get thrown out of whack. And that's not a good feeling. I do have things that are in place, but I schedule those things with the full knowledge of my kid could get sick and my entire day can get canceled at any time. Or like last week, my husband had surgery on his bicep. He tore his bicep, had to have surgery. So everything was out of whack. So I feel like the more kids you have or the different places that your business is at and family, things just happen. But I do try to have certain things, certain outlets available to me for the most part. So I do try to get regular massages. I have an infrared sauna at home that I use when I can. I love to get out for a morning walk with my 1-year-old. He normally wakes up before anyone else, which means I wake up with him. And so I strap him onto me and we go out for a walk. And my routine always changes, but right now I'd say that is like a staple for me. Just getting sunlight first thing in the morning to set my circadian rhythm, getting fresh air, moving my body. I have these Bahe grounding shoes, which are awesome. So I can be grounded to the earth and experience those healing negative ions in my body. That's a big one for me right now. But it's been different things at different times and different seasons of life, depending on what works. When my kids are older and when they sleep in a little bit more, I'll probably get back to journaling in the morning before they all wake up. I think it's important to have something, some kind of an outlet, something that you're doing to feel recentered, especially when everything else is so penciled out and so structured and planned and you're pouring into your team and your family. And I think it's healthy to do something to restore your energy and all of that so that you can continue to do what's expected of you.
Yeah. And I love that. I mean, I think that a lot of times we think like, oh, if it's not this perfect 10-step morning routine, then what's the point of doing anything? But I think motherhood does have a way of showing you there might be a lot of mornings where you can't do anything because you won't have that full time or whatever you're deeming
Yeah,
as like
have a rough
it
night with a baby
counts.
and you just
Right.
need sleep more than a morning routine. Yeah,
Exactly. I love that word restore. Like, what are little moments that can restore you, your energy, reset your body, reset your mind? We need those things and they don't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to take a super long time, but just having them in some capacity. And then,
something.
each
Right,
season it probably will change. That's a
right.
very normal, healthy thing. But
Like a
being,
bath at night, after the kids
yeah,
go to sleep, it's just something. Just
yeah, something. We
yeah.
need something every day. Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that. So I get a lot of listeners that feel like they want to start a business or they have this dream, but then they get scared or they have fear that just consumes them or they don't think that they're good enough or that initial starting moment for themselves is something that feels like it's blocked or that maybe one day they'll do it. Do you have any advice when it comes to starting something, whether it turns into a full business or you're doing it almost as a side hustle, that process of getting started? Do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, I think one thing that wasn't intentional, it kind of happened by accident for me, but that I'm grateful for was that I really started Primally Pure out of my own passion. And I didn't have these big expectations for it of what I wanted it to be in the beginning. I was just excited about it and did it just out of that excitement. But I do think a lot of people start out and they see these other businesses or maybe they see these other individuals and where they're at and they think it feels like this insurmountable hurdle to get to that point. And so rather than just seeing it as their journey and just taking that next step forward based on where they're at the time, they almost become paralyzed because they're just so caught up in comparison. And I know it's hard not to compare yourself, of course, but I think that is one of the biggest challenges that people come across is feeling less than because they're comparing their beginning to someone else's middle or end of the journey. And as much as possible, if you can just kind of like head down, do that next thing, take that next step, and not compare yourself to where other people are at. I think that's super important.
I think that's so smart. I feel like for me and you, we were almost lucky because Instagram wasn't really a thing. You know, I started Simply Real Health in 2012 too. So it's that same time where Instagram stories was not even a thing. I don't even think
Oh,
Instagram was around
maybe like
then.
just
So
starting, not that
yeah,
many people using it.
yeah, there was not a lot to compare to, but just keep your head down and also keep following your joy, following the things that
Right,
feel so good to you because there's something behind that. There's a reason why
right.
you feel that. You were probably put on this earth to be doing something like that, where you kind of do lose track of time, or it does feel like you you get energy from what
Yeah,
you're doing. And the more you do that, it feels less and less like work and more like something you'd be doing anyways, probably.
yeah,
Yeah,
100%. Like if nothing else, just do it because it feels good and because you have this desire that, like you said, is in you for a reason. I think that God puts these things on our hearts for a reason, and it's our responsibility and our job to act on it. And so, even if it feels like no one else is paying attention, like it's not catching on, I think it's still important to act on those desires and passions.
I think so too. What do you want every woman or every person listening to this podcast to know when it comes to their health and the products that they're using specifically, like skincare, body care?
I guess I would encourage people, I would just say, just because something is being sold in a store does not mean that it's safe. It doesn't mean that it's been tested. I mean, there's tens of thousands of ingredients being sold in skincare products and personal care products, and only a small fraction of those have ever even been tested for safety. So essentially, when we think about it in that sense, we are all participating in this big experiment in terms of the products we're using and the foods we're eating. And if you look at rates of disease and just how quickly those have been increasing over the last few decades, like it's an experiment that is not going well. And so, if we want an outcome that's different than that of the general public in terms of cancer diagnoses and autoimmune conditions, and if we don't want to experience those things, we have to be willing to live in a way that does not align with the way that most people are living. So that means making different choices about the foods we're eating. That means making different choices about the products we're using in a way. And I don't want this to sound scary to people. Like to me, there's so much freedom in that because we can have a different outcome if we choose that and if we are willing to swim upstream and not just go with the flow of what people are doing and what we're being advised by a lot of organizations. So I just think it takes a willingness to make a different type of choice for your future and for your family's future, and just a little bit extra research. And no one's perfect. Like I don't live in this perfectly healthy way all the time. I try my best, and trying my best now looks a lot different than trying my best did 10 years ago. I started this whole journey by first avoiding gluten and refined sugar, but I didn't have any other standards. And, I've slowly accumulated more standards, and it becomes easier over time. Once you kind of get used to one thing, then you can add the next thing. Um, but I would just say doing these things, you will notice a difference. You will feel better. The health of your skin will improve, and just take things one step at a time and have fun with it and have fun finding that person or that company or whatever whose information you enjoy consuming and relate to. You are an amazing resource for people. Obviously, we have a blog that people can learn a lot from. And so it's finding the right resources that resonate with you and doing what you can with it.
Yeah, I think that's just so true. Just getting educated of like what is really going on,
Yeah.
you know, whether it's food or it's skincare or it's other products in your life, of being willing to take a clear look at it, not just because, oh, this is what's always been done or what I've always used or what I grew up using, but actually looking at, does that align with how I want to live, with how I want to feel, with my values, how I want to treat my body. And it's very much upstream, like how you say it like that. I always say it's countercultural, not
Yes.
the social norm to do that. But I do think that is changing. And I think even in the next 10, 20 years, it's going to be so much more of a very normal thing, and a thing that so many more people are looking for that and wanting that and demanding that. Like, it has to start there. I just so appreciate all of the work that you have done and all of these beautiful products that you create, because they honestly have changed my life. Like, I did not know about oil cleansing until I met you. And I remember sitting at that table when we were out to dinner that one time, and I forget who it was. Somebody else was like, "You haven't tried it? Like, Sarah, you of all people." I'm like, "I don't even use anything. I was using water, I think, on my face
I
for,
remember that. Oh my God.
I was like, I mean, after my, astringent days of like, oh, I want it to tingle. I was
If it
in middle
doesn't burn,
school.
it's not doing something.
But this discovery of not only is it better for you, but it creates these little moments in your day. Even like we were talking about before, life is busy. And when you are doing a lot of different things and you're pouring into a lot during the day, having these little moments for yourself is one of my favorite things about
That's
Primally Pure. It's ingredients I can trust. I know that the mission behind it is so amazing. I know how much emphasis you put on the quality. I know that they're all truly real ingredients, and they give me this moment to take a second to restore myself. And I just think that we all need that.
yeah, I love that you brought that up, because that is so true. And that's why I love facial massage. And we have different tools. We have gua sha tools and ridged rollers and cupping tools, but we carry so much tension in our face. And anytime we can just pause, and whether it's an intentional massage with your fingertips while you're oil cleansing, or something more advanced like gua sha, not that gua sha is super advanced, but something that takes a little bit more effort like gua sha or facial cupping, like that is going to break up so much tension in your face. And we carry emotions in our face. It's going to help with that. It's also going to break up stagnation, which leads to fine lines and wrinkles. It's going to increase circulation, which is healing for any type of skin condition that anyone is dealing with. So yeah, there are so many benefits to taking a moment and caring for your skin.
It is this domino effect. It's like you do this, and then all these other things really do improve, get better. Well, I love talking to you. I'm sure we could honestly be talking for hours, and I still can think of probably at least 20 questions I want to ask you, but for the sake of time and for people listening, if people are just starting out on this transition to more natural skincare, trying to upgrade their products, is there anything that you would recommend that they start with first? It can be a little overwhelming.
From our line?
Yeah.
I would say cleansing oil. Switching to that as a cleanser is going to really help not only give your skin a deep clean, but also restore your natural moisture barrier. If people had to pick only 3 things, I would say cleansing oil, everything spray as a toner, and all of our moisturizers are great. All of our serums are great, our creams, just depending on your skin condition.
Deodorant? Would that be one?
Well, yeah, deodorant, of course. Yeah. Deodorant's like the product I'm most connected to. Is like what I started with. Love a deodorant. I would say, okay, if people had to choose 4 things, sorry, I'd say our deodorant, cleansing oil,
so good.
everything spray, and any one of our serums or creams, just depending on what your goals are.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, Bethany, thank you so much for being here, for coming on, for just sharing more of your story. We'll be sharing the episode, of course, on Instagram. And if you guys have any questions, be sure to reach back out. You can send me a DM at Simply Real Health. You can also contact Primally Pure. They have an amazing Instagram page. They've got an amazing blog, just like so full of education, resources, and content. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Sarah.
If you enjoyed this episode and want more like it, make sure you're subscribed to the Simply Real Life podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, and maybe share it with a friend or two. That would mean the world.